Well, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to the channel. If you're a returning visitor, of course, it's welcome back to you, and thank you for being part of my journey. Today, we're going to be talking about the crystal phenacite, or sometimes known as phenakite, depending on it's got various spelling, various pronunciations. But before we get into that, of course, I just want to remind people, especially if you're new to the channel, just let you know the information that I share is the information that I've gathered across my life experiences, shall we say, or from what I've been told by other people. And so I like to share that information with people as part of a starting of a conversation because we all have different experiences. And so you are most welcome, and it would be appreciated if you let people know what your experiences are with a crystal, including phenacite, because yours might be different to mine. Um, my experience with it was that it basically blew open my third eye, but I'll be talking about that later on with yous. But what else can I say? Actually, just a reminder, just letting you know, I do have a dog, right? It's just a small one. He can be a little bit disruptive, and sometimes I've got to stop and start during the videos with the recording of the slides. But anyway, look, I'll get on with it with the thank you. I've invited you. If you find any of the information useful, feel comfortable to give us a like or something like that, because that would be appreciated. It helps to keep me motivated. But I'll jump straight in now with phenacite. So when we talk about phenacite, this image is an example, a sample of what it actually looks like. You can see it is on a host rock here, and I pinched it or poached it from Mindat, so it does have copyright applied to it. But anyway, where I'm going with this is, it does look a little bit clear quartzy, and apparently it used to be quite often mistaken for clear quartz because it's not that, or diamond, and clearly it's not that either. It is a kind of beryllium silicate, apparently, and what I found interesting is that the name phenacite actually comes from a Greek word that is, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, phenakos, which means the deceiver. And this is because it does have this clear glass-like appearance that is deceptive. As I said, it can be mistaken for diamond or quartz. The important thing to note here, though, is it is extremely rare. It's not that common, and therefore it is actually really expensive from where I sit. The piece that I had years ago was about the size of a piece of grain, so it's not a rice grain, actually. It's not a big crystal as far as I know. Most of the time it would probably look like a specimen. It's also, where phenacite is concerned energetically, it's considered to be one of the most powerful crystals that you can have. And if you've done your research on the Synergy 12, it's one of those. And the Synergy 12 consists of a number of different crystal names that are said to be the most powerful crystals that you can use for healing properties. I, of course, my approach is I don't know whether they are or aren't, but I would say that even if it's not the most powerful crystal in the world, or even if it wasn't part of the Synergy 12, my experience with it was that it was very powerful. So let's get a little bit more information happening here. The reason why I associate it with being a powerful crystal is because of the brow chakra experiences I had. I had some quite deep, visionary experiences. So it is definitely associated with the brow chakra, despite the fact that it's clear. This is one of those occasions where, quite often the colour of a crystal will match the chakra that you're going to work with it. But then on other occasions, like with phenacite, it doesn't match colour-wise to the brow chakra, but it is still very tightly associated with it because it really works. It's a powerful worker for that. Also works on the crown chakra because it's about having spiritual wisdom and spiritual vision. So I don't know what other people think. You might associate it with different chakras, in which case I would be interested to hear your story and understanding. So from a metaphysical overview perspective, we are going to go into the attributes on the slides coming up, but just as a kind of summary, it certainly is a stone of truth, revelations, in my experience, definitely associated to the psychic gifts of prophecy, expands all your clairs. And what I did see is it's associated also with helping people to develop psychokinesis. If you don't know what that is, that's kind of like using the power of the mind to forcibly move material objects. That's something I might talk about on a different video. But anyway, Phenacite is believed to promote those types of gifts as well. I would also say, based on my experience of working with it, it does take you into the higher realms. If you're looking to develop your mediumship abilities, it will assist there. What I would say though, if this is your focus of attention, a lot of the time people are drawn to things like energy work and crystals because they want to develop their psychic gifts. But the key factor to developing them with any reliability is actually to work on your base chakras first, your lower ones. You've got to get those solid foundations in place. Otherwise, the end result is that people can basically run the risk of becoming delusional and even psychotic because they can't determine what is a real message from what is a genuine message. So if you do it in the right way, I say right as in build the chakras all together and allow it to unfold naturally as well, you're going to have more reliable gifts, shall we say. So it is also associated with developing wisdom, self-awareness, transformation, all of those kind of things. But it's on this one I'm going to say, look, but I'll give you my experience of working with it. As I said, it was a tiny, tiny little piece of phenacite. It was only about the size of a long grain of rice. And I was told to put it over my brow chakra and meditate if I wanted to develop my psychic gifts better, because I was struggling with that for other reasons. I was able to channel healing and healing energy, but I was struggling with the capacity to communicate directly with spirit at the time. So we're going back many years for this experience. But where I'm going with this as well, there is an image here of this little tree, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of the African trees. And the relevance here is that when I meditated with Phenacite, it was almost instantaneous where I started getting visions of Africa, and I knew it was Africa because of the tree in the first instance. And then I was able to see the giraffes eating the tops of the tree. Now, of course, the key also when you're working at developing these gifts is not to act surprised, to just take that observational role of what it is that you're being shown. So I could clearly identify that I was visualizing a scene in Africa, but I didn't obviously understand why. And then just to prove the point, I was shown a little, I'm almost scared to use color references here, but a native African, a black African girl, absolutely gorgeous little girl, about the age of 5 or 6, was sitting under a tree like we see here with the yellow flowers everywhere. And I presume that they're daisies because she was making a daisy chain. And I was just watching her play and just thinking, one, how peaceful and happy and contented this little child looked, and how beautiful she was. She was absolutely gorgeous, and how contented and happy she was. But at some point with me observing this vision, her mother came in and held her hands out, and I got the impression, as I recall, the thing with having these amazing visions is when they're genuine, they stay with you forever, much like me telling you this vision here. Anyway, I saw the mother come forward and obviously call to her child, and the little girl smiled. She was so happy to see her mum, and she ran into her mother's arms. And then, in fact, I felt that they actually turned around and acknowledged me as in a wave. And anyway, it was shortly after that I came out of the vision, because to me, I started to analyse what it was that I'd seen, which you don't really want to do. By the way, that was my dog burping, if anybody heard that. That wasn't very nice, Toby. Anyway, so suffice to say, I was a little confused by having that vision. I didn't see the relevance in it whatsoever. And so I was talking to a friend and telling her about the bizarrest experience that I had when using Phenacite. And I said, and I've got no idea why I saw this stuff in Africa, what the purpose of it was. And I said, and I've actually turned around and said to my guides now that, if they want to show me stuff, can at least be relevant to, that that I can do something with it. Anyway, she turned around and she said to me, I know what that vision relates to. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, you remember you came to, she'd had a party. So this was where she was going. She'd had a party a few weeks earlier, which I'd attended, and I'd been introduced to a black African man, very tall man, very gentle man. And I didn't talk to him that much to get his story or anything like that. But she said, remember this guy? And I said, oh, yes, actually, I remember his name now too. It was Peter. She said, remember Peter? And I said, yes. She said, he was a political exile. She said, and what he is really struggling with is when he came to Australia, he was trying to get his daughter out and his wife to be with him because it was unsafe. It was at a time of obviously a lot of political unrest in the country that he was living. And before he could get them out, the village that they were living in all died. I won't go into the whole story, but it was something that he was really struggling with grief-wise and feeling guilty that he hadn't been able to get them out. And so realistically, the message was actually for him, the vision I had been shown was to be able to affirm to him that his wife and daughter were very happy in the spirit realm. They obviously were still around him, just sending those messages of love to him and reassuring him that they weren't unsafe or unhappy where they were at. They were just in a really nice place on the other side. Sorry, there goes my dog again. In regard to the Zodiac, Phenacite is actually, if you do your research on it, you'll see that people promote it as a crystal for the Gemini star sign, or alternatively, my position, which is one that I support, is that it doesn't matter what your star sign is, anybody can benefit from it. So I recommend it for all people. I think there are other people out there that may make that recommendation as well. But regardless, look, whatever your star sign is, if you're drawn towards it, then this is the crystal for you, especially if you're trying to raise your light vibration. So when it comes to the mineral properties, of course, I've done a little bit of research on it because this is definitely not my field of expertise, shall we say. And so I'm reliant on the information that I've gathered as opposed to knowing with any great conviction if there's truth to it. But my understanding is it's, from a hardness perspective, it's reasonably hard. It's 7.5 to 8 on the hardness scale. And apparently it is, I call it clear, some people call it colourless. It can be white, yellow, or even a pale rose. Now, I am aware, I've heard of it being white, but I haven't heard of it being yellow or pale rose before, so obviously I'll hand that over to you guys. Definitely transparent, definitely has a smooth and glassy look to it, as you will have seen in some of the images we've put up. As far as the toxicity goes, I've got no idea, and as far as locations for where it can be sourced, it probably can be sourced from other areas as well. So I'm not 100% sure, but definitely from Russia, Brazil, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Colorado, I think at least. The information, looking at my transcripts here of the properties, say, of the phenacite and the sources, is that Russian phenacite is supposed to be extremely strong, but it's not as pure as the Brazilian type of phenacite. And also the other thing is that sometimes in Russia, the phenacite can intergrow with fluorite and aquamarine, which certainly sounds very interesting. The African phenacites are apparently very similar to the Brazilian, but apparently they're very, very rare, quite difficult to get. And obviously when a crystal is rare as this one would be, then it's going to be quite costly to get. I have a feeling that the phenacite that I got was probably from Colorado because it says it occurs in quarter-inch cubes, still very strong, still very powerful from a metaphysical perspective, but usually more affordable as well. What I did see, as far as research goes, is that sometimes it can occur as the little crystal that we're looking at in this image here, but other times it can be small prismatic clusters with larger type crystals. I think that would be very interesting, and I've got no idea actually who I can get this from as a supplier because I've been trying to find it locally. When I say locally, actually, internationally is more the point, so not locally at all. I've just been doing a lot of Google trying to find wholesalers of Phenacite so that I can buy it, because I want to be able to get it from a reputable source. So that then goes into our buying tips, of which you may as well say, when it comes to buying tips, I really don't have any beyond the normal. Know what you're buying as far as what is the weight, what is the dimensions. Trying to find a reputable supplier is going to be a little bit difficult, I think. These images here are images that I've sourced, which I believe are verifiable in as far as the geology websites, and it shows you images of what it looks like. And you can see here that prismatic cluster. I mean, if I was given something like that, I don't think that I would be able to tell whether that was some form of quartz or whether it was actually phenacite. So because of the nature of it, and because there is a deceptivity, if you like, about misnaming it, I would want to get it from a verifiable source. So if you know where there's one, please do let me know. Leave a comment, because at least those of us that are looking to buy it will know that there's actually a credible source out there. Definitely, I would say the piece that I had many years ago, although it was only small, about the size of a piece of long grain rice or basmati rice or whatever, it was very, very small. It had this distinctive shape that we're looking at with the Russian phenacite, and with the one in the middle that's down the bottom. So the middle image on the bottom, that was what my piece looked like. So from a spiritual perspective and the attributes that it carries, the beauty of phenacite is that because it's a powerful crystal, even if you're not normally sensitive to crystal energetic properties, apparently it's powerful enough that even the most, or people that would consider themselves to be the most insensitive to it, will actually feel or gain something from working with phenacite, something that is observable, that will open up their consciousness. For myself, obviously it worked as far as opening up the psychic gifts to get visions, but this is one of the big ones. And I suppose, or I would like to think, that the nature or the description of my experience that I shared with you is one that shows that there is an astral travel, interdimensional travel, an aspect to working with phenacite, as I stumble over my words. So definitely it's used to promote the psychic gifts, which includes the clairs. If you're not open to developing that brow chakra or to having the visions, quite often it will come in as really strong intuitive gut instinct. And if you're like me, although I was able to have access to the visions through a meditative or conscious state, dreams are another wonderful way of getting guided messages, including prophetic type ones, which I've also had too, but not necessarily working with phenacite at the time. But so going back to the dreams, that's the sleep state, the being able to remember the dreams that you had while you were sleeping, and to be able to interpret them, because obviously colours, if you ever look at unpacking dreams or dream psychology, a lot of detail is involved in that. I might do a video specifically related to unpacking your dreams at some point in time. Past life obviously has got relevance to if you need to heal a past life issue for the present. So it's believed to promote access to the records, the akashic records on your past life, anything that may be left unresolved, and to assist in the process of not only recalling these past lives, but to be able to interpret the messages that you actually receive. Remember that healing is underlying, or the underpinning factor for all of this. As far as the orcas, that'd be great, whales, aura and chakras goes, you would be looking at the fact that it purifies the entire aura, which includes the layers. We're talking about the emotional, the mental, the astral body, and all the rest of it. So it's got huge enlightenment properties. What have I got here? I'm just looking at my notes again. So it definitely is recommended to activate and open the chakras, but also to align and recalibrate them, which is quite phenomenal, I shall say. So it's part of clearing away the blockages and opening the channels. And this is because this is how you're able to access these higher realms, to access your higher self, and to expand that light body, which of course, I'm just looking at my notes again, is part of communicating with those higher beings. If you're into Ascended Masters, I saw somebody made a recommendation for them. For me, it's just higher beings. I use it as a generic term. For me, it's angels and guides and connecting to the divine source. So it's very much a crystal that's recommended for spiritual growth, raising your consciousness. It is associated with an awakening, a spiritual awakening, and raising your spiritual awareness. Now, when we talk about awareness, we can be talking about personal awareness, understanding of self in our human form today. When we're talking about raising our spiritual awareness, it's about knowing and understanding the life purpose, the life path, and the journey of our soul as well as our physical being. What else have I got? Transformation, turning darkness to light. It is believed to offer protective qualities for the aura, because this is part of enlightening. My understanding is when you raise the light vibration to the maximum it can carry, light always repels darkness. I'm just trying to think how to portray this. It was said to me many years ago that darkness doesn't consume the light. If you walk into a dark space and you turn the light on, everything becomes enlightened. And this is the same with energy. So when we are living actively with light, there's no room for the darkness and the heaviness to come into our auric space, for want of a better word. Other properties include the lifting of the veil, to be able to see past illusion, to see the truth of situations and life. And of course, I've put it down the bottom, but it actually should be right at the top, which is aligning your will to divine will. So physical healing benefits, of course, we put that big disclaimer up there at the top, which is, don't rely on your crystals to do all your physical healing. If you've got health issues, do ensure that you actually continue to engage with your treating specialists. And that includes actually if you've got emotional or mental health problems as well. Don't stop engaging with those professionals just to rely totally on your crystals. In most instances, you can actually use your crystals in conjunction with your doctor or with any health condition as a complement. But if you've got any concerns, do go and have a chat with your doctor. So that being said, some of the benefits that are promoted is actually for cellular restoration and repair as part of overcoming major health issues. If people have got nervous problems, and I mean physically, nerve endings, and that could actually even be neuropathy, the neural pathways and that kind of thing, where there's some damage or some repair that needs to be done. Apparently it's recommended for that. If people have neurological issues such as imbalance or poor function, or where there's a problem with brain chemistry, apparently Phenacite is recommended for that. The interesting one that I noted here was that it's also recommended to soothe and alleviate growing pains. Of course, as with everything, I say, hey, look, let us know if you've used it for that. Let us know if it actually works. Other ones such as promoting the longevity of life, giving you a longer lifespan. Of course, that could be a rather extravagant claim, but maybe it is, because the claim is that it does this because it protects the body against illness. So there's a shielding there. And if you look at the other attribute where general health, it's said to actually raise a person's awareness of what is going on in their own physical body, what they feel uncomfortable with. And I interpret that as being able to identify when there's a need for an early intervention. So generally speaking, I gave you a little bit of an example here when I checked my transcript. It would be like quite often we push ourselves beyond our physical limits. You can feel, perhaps if you've done a lot of lifting and shifting furniture around, you might start to feel muscle strain. But the nature of us as humans is we go like, oh, yeah, it's starting to hurt, but I'm going to keep doing it because it's not much further, and then I'm finished with it. So they push themselves that little bit far, and then before they know it, they've actually torn the muscle, or they've done ligament or cartilage damage because they didn't stop when their body was telling them to. So when we think of it from that perspective, you can understand why it might promote longevity if you're paying attention to your body, listening to your body and responding to it, not pushing it past its limitations and giving it a rest and a break when it needs it. Other attributes, of course, include energizing and boosting a person, giving more vitality. And I guess that actually carries over to the emotional side of things. When we're feeling more energized and we've got high vitality, we actually feel more enthusiastic about life as well. So let's have a look at the emotional attributes. So from an emotional perspective, Phenacite is going to enhance the capacity to hold the inner peace feelings, the harmony of your emotions. I guess the best way to describe that is if people struggle to link the mind and the heart and have that the heart's telling them one thing and the head's telling them something else, it's about connecting and linking those together to create this sense of inner peace, which is harmony. Of course, acceptance, releasing resistance is part of it. When I talk about linking the mind and the heart together, this is about cognitive, well, not necessarily cognitive processing, but cognitive unity. They call it cognitive, distortion or something like that when you've got the heart and the head in conflict. So basically it's going to pull it together, create a sense of unity within a person, and also lends itself to greater self-awareness. So where we've got spiritual awareness and knowledge and understanding the pathway, self-awareness is actually recognizing those traits within that create, say, emotional reactions, to know our triggers, to recognize within ourselves when we're becoming triggered, and to take action to prevent an outburst, if you like. So it lends itself to greater emotional self-mastery would be the best way of describing it. That's helpful for conflict resolution and also to be able to see both sides of an argument. So there's enhanced decision making with this as well. And my perspective is that because once you go into the acceptance state, you learn to understand, I think at a core level, that sometimes in life we don't have all the answers, and sometimes in life we're not meant to have all of them right now. But over the passage of time, the answers to the things that cause us problems as we walk the journey, that they become clear. They come to us down the track a lot of the time. So for me, what I adopted was this process of gratitude for blessings seen and unseen, particularly when I was struggling with adverse situations, was, even just to turn around and say to the universe, look, I've got no idea why I'm going through this, but I'm going to trust the process. There's a bigger reason, there's a bigger purpose to what's going on, and it will be revealed to me over the passage of time. And I just say thank you for the blessings seen and unseen. I have a feeling, and I'm speculating here, I wouldn't like to make it sound as though I'm got all the answers, but I suspect that the really difficult parts of life are about the soul expansion. And when we talk about soul expansion, it's not always simply about us as individuals. We generally, my understanding is, we have a soul pack as well. So it's for the greater good of not only our own spiritual growth, but also for the development of the pack, if that makes sense. Once again, I invite your comments. As far as uses go, look, because most of them are these very small pieces, I feel the most suitable use for them is actually through meditation, putting it over your third eye. But having said that, I have seen some jewelry around where it's kind of framed and protected and sealed and that kind of thing. So that would be good as a talisman, say if it was a pendant. If you're lucky enough to get some of those little clusters, which of course I wouldn't know where you would begin to find it. Excuse my dog with his squeaky toy. It might be dependent on the size, suitable as an ornament, as an environmental purifier, but I would imagine it's probably best suited towards doing things like gridding. But once again, I say, look, I'm really open to hearing how other people use it. Just going back to using Phenacite for meditation purposes, I do have recollections, and I saw it there. We'll just try and ignore my dog. I hope he doesn't impact too much. I'm holding the microphone right to my mouth now. But basically, you will feel a sense of pulsing. If you're at least energy aware and energy sensitive, you should feel a bit of pulsing when it goes over the third eye, or if you're placing it on your crown chakra, if you're trying to channel wisdom or something like that, then you probably will feel some pulsating as well. Now that Toby has taken away his toy, I can get back into recording this. Okay, so as far as a messenger goes, I really believe the primary message of Phenacite is to let go of judgment and to take on that observational role of your life and your surroundings, okay? And to keep this open mind in regard to the messages that you receive, or in regard to your intuition, because this is how we learn. It's through observation that we learn to basically withhold our judgment about situations, because we start to recognize we're only looking at one part of the story. The rest of the story is yet to unfold, and it's in the fullness of the story that we learn what feels right, what doesn't feel right, what is our moral position, shall we say, around a subject, because that sense of right or wrong is often due to the position that we sit in, the perspective that we're looking at. So I definitely believe, it's let go of judgment, just observe, withhold, learn to discern, if I can speak, discern the truth of a situation. And that means pulling all the pictures together, if you like, all the images, all the stories, to get the fullness and the rounded image. And that actually takes me back to a vision I was shown many, many years ago when I was seeking answers to a situation. And it was like, in fact, actually what I saw was the hands putting together a jigsaw puzzle, and the hand kept going to the pile of the pieces and then connecting it. So this jigsaw puzzle was being filled. And then at the last part, there was one piece that was missing. Literally, this is how my guides communicate with me. The picture was almost complete, but there was a missing piece. The hand went to the pile, and of course the pile had all been used, and the puzzle hadn't been completed. And the clear message that I got through this image that came clairaudiently was, there is more to this picture, right? And the other bits will be revealed at the divine time, in the divine way. And if it involves other people, they have to be ready to come into that picture as well to complete that puzzle, if that makes sense. As far as crystal care goes, Phenacite is reasonably hardy, but the reminder is it's generally quite small. So you can cleanse it using any of the mainstream traditional cleansing methods that you prefer. Of course, I've got the video. The link will be up in the description on potential methods to use. Smudging, things like that, they're going to be fine. Sunlight, moonlight should be fine, but I wouldn't leave any crystal, including Phenacite, out for any great length of time in either the sun or a full moon. Well, yeah, I think I'd be very careful with the full moon because it's such a small piece. Having said that, I think the biggest thing really when it comes to Phenacite is, how do you store it? And I guess if it's a small piece in a specimen box, that's just so that you know where it is, and just to make sure that it clips closed, because if you've got that tiny little piece like what I have, once you lose it, you're lucky to be able to find it. I never ever found mine again, which was rather unfortunate and a bit depressing for me, but such is life. So yeah, that would be the biggest issue for crystal care, I think. So, my friends, all of that being said, I'm going to say thank you very much for being part of my journey. I hope that I've been able to give you some useful information. I look forward to seeing your comments, hearing feedback from you about how you use Phenacite, what your understanding, your education, your awareness is, how you would use it. And I know at least with one person, I'm talking about Elia, they have suggested that you work with Phenacite and Barra together. So that would be interesting. But anyway, I'm going to say love you, leave you, take care, have a blessed day, blessed week. Catch you on the next video. Bye-bye for now.